Please give me a chance for the interview. There was so much traffic, please, sir.
I understand, but punctuality is important.
Poor Orphan arrived late for an interview. CEO saw her and fell in love with her. Esteemed viewers, welcome to Luxurious True Life Stories. Please like and subscribe for more captivating luxury true stories. Let's get into the story. On a bitter winter morning in a quiet European city, the first train had not yet arrived when an aging railway cleaner noticed a small basket near the iron gates. Inside lay a newborn wrapped in a faded shawl, her tiny breaths forming soft clouds in the cold air. No note, no name, no sign that anyone intended to return. Authorities were called, and by noon the infant was registered into the system as Cynthia Walter, a surname borrowed from paperwork, not heritage. From her very first hour, life taught her a silent truth. She belonged to no one but herself. The orphanage that received her stood on the edge of the city, a gray stone building that seemed untouched by warmth. Yet Cynthia grew into a strangely calm child. She rarely cried, watched everything with observant eyes, and learned early how to occupy a little space. Caregivers describe her as self-contained, the kind of child who did not demand affection but somehow deserved it the most. While other children fought over toys, Cynthia preferred windows, watching snowfall, watching seasons change, watching families walk past the gates. As she grew, one question quietly shaped her identity. If no one came for me then, someone must still exist somewhere. Rather than break her, the mystery strengthened her resolve. Cynthia developed a habit of promising herself small things. I will not be weak. I will not be forgotten. I will build a life worth noticing. No one heard these vows, yet they rooted deeply inside her, preparing her for a future neither gentle nor predictable. Discipline ruled the orphanage. Bells dictated waking hours, study hours, and even laughter. Cynthia adapted quickly, understanding that resistance only made life harder. She excelled in school, not because she was pressured, but because knowledge felt like a ladder out of invisibility. Teachers noticed her sharp memory and quiet determination. She finished assignments early and often helped younger children read. Still, evenings carried a different weight. Visiting hours brought strangers who evaluated children with hopeful smiles that sometimes faded into polite refusals. Cynthia learned not to expect footsteps stopping in front of her. Instead, she became the comforter, braiding nervous girls' hair, telling stories to toddlers, and sitting beside anyone who feared they were unwanted. Compassion became her shield against loneliness. By 13, she understood something many adults never grasped. Family was not always given. Sometimes it was chosen through kindness. She began dreaming of a future where she would never again have to wait to be selected. Independence became her quiet ambition. Not wealth, not luxury, just the freedom to stand firmly on her own. Daniel Theodore arrived at the orphanage school as a scholarship student from a nearby low-income district. His clothes were worn but clean, his posture confident despite obvious hardship. On his first day, a classroom misunderstanding left him without lunch. Cynthia noticed but said nothing. She simply split her bread and placed half beside him. Daniel looked surprised, then grateful, a silent agreement forming between them. Their friendship grew naturally. Daniel possessed a restless intelligence, always sketching inventions and business ideas in the margins of his notebooks. Cynthia admired his fearless thinking, while he admired her steadiness. Where he was fire, she was anchor. They studied together after class, often sitting beneath a large elm tree, where Daniel spoke about building something so big it could change lives. Unlike others, Daniel never treated Cynthia as someone lacking a past. To him, she was simply Cynthia, perceptive, strong, and quietly remarkable. For the first time, she felt seen rather than overlooked, and the unfamiliar warmth both comforted and frightened her. By 16, their bond had deepened into something tender yet unspoken. One evening after a school exhibition, they wandered through glowing streets alive with music and traffic. Daniel stopped at a bridge overlooking the river, its surface shimmering with reflected lights. "I won't stay small forever," he said softly. "And when I find my place in the world, I'll come back for the people who believed in me." Cynthia smiled. "Then don't forget me when everything changes." Daniel extended his hand with a seriousness beyond his years. Impossible. They sealed that moment with a simple promise. No matter how far life carried them, they would find each other again. Neither realized how fiercely fate would test those words. Opportunity arrived abruptly. A distant relative offered Daniel a chance to move abroad, better schools, broader horizons, a path out of poverty. The decision was immediate. Departure came within days. There was no time for long goodbyes. At the station, Daniel pressed a folded paper into Cynthia's palm, an address he hoped would remain permanent. "Write to me when you can," he urged. Cynthia nodded, though uncertainty flickered in her chest. She owned no phone, and letters from the orphanage were strictly controlled. As the train pulled away, Cynthia felt an unfamiliar emptiness expand within her, yet she refused to cry. Promises, she believed, were stronger than distance. Weeks later, the address proved useless when his relative relocated again. Letters returned unopened. Gradually, silence replaced hope. Cynthia did not know it then, but their separation was not an ending, only a long, quiet pause before destiny rearranged their lives. The day Cynthia turned 18, the orphanage director handed her a small envelope containing her identification papers, modest savings, and a list of employment centers. The gesture was formal but not unkind. Rules were rules. By sunset, she stood outside the iron gates with a single suitcase, realizing independence often begins without ceremony. The city moved indifferently around her, taxis rushing past, strangers laughing, storefronts glowing with lives she was not yet part of. Her first months were relentless. Cynthia accepted whatever work came: early morning bakery shifts, late-night cleaning jobs, temporary retail positions during holiday crowds. Sleep became a luxury measured in hours she could not afford. Yet she never allowed exhaustion to dull her discipline. Each paycheck was divided carefully: rent for a narrow attic room, groceries, transportation, and a tiny portion saved with stubborn consistency. Despite hardship, Cynthia nurtured quiet hobbies that kept her grounded. She loved reading biographies of self-made individuals, practiced typing to improve her office skills, and spent Sundays walking through public parks imagining the life she intended to build. Loneliness still visited, but it no longer frightened her. She had learned a powerful truth: strength is often forged in ordinary, unseen battles. Thousands of miles away, Daniel Theodore refused to let opportunity slip through his hands. He balanced rigorous academic programs with part-time work, studying markets while others slept. Failure visited him often, rejected proposals, collapsed partnerships, ideas ahead of their time. But each setback sharpened his instincts rather than discouraging him. His breakthrough came when he identified a gap in logistics technology that larger firms had overlooked. Investors initially hesitated, seeing only a young man with ambition but little proof. Daniel persisted, refining his pitch until skepticism slowly transformed into cautious support. The company he founded began modestly, operating from a shared workspace with secondhand furniture and an overworked coffee machine. Years passed, and persistence compounded into success. Strategic decisions, calculated risks, and an unusual ability to anticipate economic shifts elevated the firm into a powerful corporate force. By his early 30s, Daniel had become one of the youngest CEOs in the region, respected, composed, and quietly formidable. Yet success never erased the memory of the girl who once shared her bread with him. With stability finally secured, Daniel turned toward a promise he had never forgotten. He hired private investigators, contacted schools, reviewed municipal archives, every logical path that might lead him back to Cynthia Walter. Each search ended the same way: no confirmed records beyond the orphanage, no current address, no digital trace. The absence unsettled him more than rejection would have. How could someone so vivid simply vanish into a city? Occasionally, he wondered if she had changed her name, married, or moved abroad. Still, something within him resisted the idea that their story had closed. Daniel developed a quiet ritual. Whenever business brought him near the district where they once studied, he would slow the car slightly, scanning sidewalks without expectation, yet unable to stop himself. Years refined him into a leader others admired. But somewhere beneath the tailored suits remained a boy holding on to a promise beneath city lights. Eventually, practicality demanded he focus forward. Yet the unanswered question lingered, not painful, just unfinished, like a melody waiting for its final note. After several unstable jobs, Cynthia recognized a pattern. Temporary work kept her surviving but not advancing. Determined to change direction, she enrolled in evening certification courses for administrative management. It meant fewer hours of rest, but she welcomed the challenge. Progress, she believed, required discomfort. One morning, while scanning job listings at a public library, a posting captured her attention, an opening at Theodore Global, a company known for innovation and strong employee growth. The qualifications were demanding yet attainable. Cynthia prepared meticulously, researching the firm, rehearsing answers, and selecting her neatest attire. The night before the interview, anticipation kept sleep shallow. Still, she set multiple alarms, arranged her documents carefully, and repeated a steady mantra. This is the doorway. Walk through it. For the first time in years, hope felt less like a fragile wish and more like something approaching certainty. Morning betrayed her plans. A power outage silenced her alarms. And when she finally woke, sunlight was already filtering through the curtains. Panic replaced composure. She dressed quickly, gathered her folder, and hurried toward the transit line, only to find traffic stalled by an unexpected roadway closure. Every passing minute tightened the knot in her chest. By the time Cynthia reached the towering glass headquarters of Theodore Global, the scheduled interviews had ended. Inside the lobby, professionalism mastered desperation as she approached the receptionist, her voice trembling but determined. She explained the delay, the outage, the traffic, and asked for even 5 minutes to prove herself. As she spoke, a nearby office door opened. Daniel Theodore had just concluded the final session and was preparing for his next meeting when a familiar cadence reached him, a voice carrying resilience he had once known intimately. He stepped into the lobby, curiosity shifting instantly into stunned recognition. Cynthia turned, sensing the movement. Their eyes met. Time seemed to pause, years collapsing into a single breath. Neither spoke at first. Disbelief needed space to transform into certainty. The girl from the bridge stood before him, older, stronger, yet unmistakably the same. Destiny, patient and precise, had finally kept its promise. For several suspended seconds, the noise of the corporate lobby faded into something distant and irrelevant, as though the world itself understood that an extraordinary collision of past and present had just occurred. Daniel Theodore, a man known for decisive movements and unshakable composure, found himself rooted to the polished marble floor, his heartbeat accelerating in a way boardroom battles had never caused. Cynthia Walter looked different. Maturity had refined the softness of her features into quiet strength, yet nothing essential about her had changed. The same observant eyes, the same restrained posture, the same unmistakable presence that had once steadied a boy who owned very little but his ambition. "Cynthia," he finally said, her name leaving his lips with disbelief wrapped in relief. She inhaled sharply, one hand tightening around her folder as recognition illuminated her face. "Daniel." The question trembled between certainty and astonishment. The receptionist glanced between them, confused by the sudden emotional gravity saturating the otherwise efficient space. Daniel stepped closer, searching her expression as though confirming she was not a memory conjured by longing. "I searched for you," he admitted quietly. "Everywhere." Cynthia swallowed, emotion rising faster than she could contain it. "I tried to write, but you moved. After that, I had nothing." There was no accusation in her tone, only the weary honesty of someone who had learned to accept unanswered questions. Daniel gestured toward a private conference room, instinctively protective of this fragile reunion from curious eyes. Once inside, the door clicked shut on the outside world. For a moment, neither spoke. They simply absorbed the improbable reality of each other. Daniel noticed the careful repairs on her handbag, the modest stitching on her sleeve, silent evidence of a life fought inch by inch. Cynthia noticed the authority in his posture, the precision of his tailored suit, the calm power he carried without display. Yet beneath all transformation, recognition flowed effortlessly. He asked about her life. She spoke briefly, never dramatizing hardship. She asked about his journey. He summarized years of struggle without boasting. Then came a softer silence, the kind filled with unspoken realization. The promise beneath city lights had not broken. It had merely waited. Daniel exhaled slowly, resolve forming with the same clarity that once built his empire. "You're not leaving this building without an opportunity," he said. Cynthia blinked, startled. "Daniel, I don't want charity." His reply was immediate. "Good. I don't offer charity. I recognize capability." In that instant, admiration, old yet newly awakened, moved quietly between them, no longer belonging to memory but to the present. Daniel personally reviewed Cynthia's credentials, though his decision had already settled somewhere deeper than documentation. Her certifications, consistent employment despite instability, and carefully developed skills told a story of endurance stronger than many privileged resumes he encountered daily. Still, he insisted on a formal interview, not as a barrier, but as respect. He asked precise questions, observing not only her answers, but the thoughtful pauses between them. Cynthia spoke with measured clarity, demonstrating organizational insight and emotional intelligence that could not be taught. When presented with a hypothetical crisis scenario, she structured a solution within seconds, prioritizing communication, accountability, and efficiency. Daniel felt a quiet pride. He did not attempt to analyze. By the time the conversation concluded, the decision was undeniable. "Welcome to Theodore Global," he said, extending his hand, though the gesture carried far more warmth than any executive formality. Cynthia accepted, relief mingling with disbelief. Stability, something she had chased for years, had finally stepped within reach. News of her hiring traveled quickly across departments, curiosity trailing behind it. Employees recognized the rarity of the CEO conducting a personal interview after official hours, and speculation began weaving itself through glass corridors. Cynthia, however, focused only on preparation. She arrived early on her first day, memorized operational structures, and asked thoughtful questions without overstepping. Daniel deliberately maintained professional distance in public spaces, understanding the scrutiny leadership attracted. Yet small moments revealed an undercurrent neither could entirely conceal: a brief exchange of knowing smiles during meetings, a shared understanding when conversations turned unexpectedly humorous. Late one evening, after most employees had departed, they crossed paths near the elevator. The building hummed softly with nighttime quiet. "I used to imagine this," Daniel confessed before caution could intervene. Cynthia tilted her head. "Imagine what?" "Finding you again, though never like this." She considered his words, a gentle vulnerability surfacing. Life rarely returns things the way we expect. Sometimes it returns them stronger. The elevator doors opened, but neither moved immediately, both aware that something long dormant had begun to breathe again, not rushed, not reckless, but steady as dawn. Corporate ecosystems thrived on perception, and perception often outran truth. Within weeks, Cynthia's efficiency became noticeable. Streamlined scheduling improved executive workflow. Communication gaps narrowed, and even senior managers appreciated her composed coordination during high-pressure days. Yet competence did not silence speculation. In some corners, it amplified it. Among the observers was Victoria Hale, Theodore Global Strategy Director, brilliant, poised, and accustomed to proximity with power. Victoria had long admired Daniel, though admiration in her vocabulary blended seamlessly with ambition. She studied Cynthia with analytical patience, noting every interaction, every assignment that hinted at trust. During a leadership briefing, Victoria deliberately tested Cynthia's knowledge with an unexpected operational query. Rather than falter, Cynthia provided a concise answer supported by data she had reviewed the previous night. A few executives nodded approvingly. Victoria offered a polite smile that never quite reached her eyes. Later, in a quieter conversation with a colleague, she remarked, "Rapid advancement often invites unnecessary complications." The sentence carried the softness of diplomacy, yet the edge of warning. Meanwhile, Daniel remained outwardly unaware of internal murmurs, focusing instead on a pending international partnership capable of expanding the company's global footprint. Cynthia became instrumental in coordinating preliminary logistics, her reliability easing pressures across departments. One afternoon, as rain traced silver paths down the windows, a minor scheduling error threatened to derail a visiting delegation. Cynthia corrected the chain within minutes, rerouting resources and preserving the meeting. Daniel observed the recovery from across the conference table, recognizing the rare steadiness that emerges only from lived resilience. Still, tension subtly gathered beneath daily routines. Victoria began positioning herself as the architect behind major initiatives, ensuring visibility aligned with influence. Cynthia sensed none of the rivalry. Her attention remained anchored in doing the work well. Yet corporate storms often form beyond the horizon long before thunder is heard. Victoria Hale believed success favored those who anticipated shifts before they surfaced, and in Cynthia she perceived not merely an employee but an unpredictable variable. Determined to protect her trajectory, Victoria initiated a quiet audit of procedural flows, framing it as a routine efficiency review. Documents were re-examined, communication trails mapped, and minor inconsistencies magnified into formal inquiries. When a vendor reported delayed confirmation, a delay actually caused by their own internal oversight, Victoria redirected scrutiny towards Cynthia's coordination channel. The implication traveled swiftly. Perhaps the CEO's confidence had been prematurely placed. Cynthia faced a review with calm transparency, providing timestamps, correspondence, and corrective actions. Facts aligned firmly in her favor, yet the emotional weight of being evaluated so publicly pressed heavily against her composure. Daniel, briefed on the matter, requested a full report rather than intervening prematurely. Leadership demanded fairness, even when instinct leaned elsewhere. That evening he found Cynthia still at her desk. Shoulders squared, though fatigue lingered beneath her professionalism. "You handled the day well," he said quietly. She offered a small smile. "Challenges clarify strengths." "I'm learning that." Daniel hesitated before adding, "You don't have to face them alone." Their eyes met. A reminder that history threaded deeper than circumstance. Meanwhile, Victoria recalibrated, recognizing that direct attacks would fail where subtle pressure might succeed. She increased her presence around Daniel, discussing long-term expansions, positioning herself as indispensable. At a formal networking gala, she arrived at his side with effortless elegance, unaware that across the room Cynthia's entrance, simple yet quietly radiant, would draw his attention with disarming immediacy. Watching them exchange a brief greeting, Victoria understood something unsettling. Influence could be negotiated, but genuine connection could not. The crisis announced itself without warning, hours before the international partnership signing. Encrypted files containing financial projections became inaccessible, threatening months of negotiation. Technical teams scrambled. Speculation rippled. Postponement loomed dangerously close. Daniel convened an emergency session, the atmosphere sharp with urgency. Cynthia, reviewing backup protocols, noticed an overlooked redundancy pathway established during a prior system's upgrade. Acting swiftly yet methodically, she coordinated with IT to retrieve mirror data while reorganizing presentation sequences to buy critical time. Her voice remained steady even as tension surged around her. Victoria watched, initially skeptical, then reluctantly impressed as order emerged from potential chaos. Within 90 minutes, the files were restored, cross-verified, and secured. The delegation, unaware of how near the company had come to embarrassment, proceeded with confidence. After signatures sealed the agreement, a quiet wave of relief passed through the executive floor. Daniel approached Cynthia once the room cleared, gratitude evident though measured. "Your judgment protected more than a deal today," he said. She exhaled softly, adrenaline finally loosening its grip. "I simply followed the structure already in place." He shook his head. Structures mean little without someone capable enough to use them. Word of her role spread quickly, transforming skepticism into respect in many quarters. Even Victoria adjusted her assessment, recognizing that underestimating Cynthia would be strategically unwise. That evening, as city lights awakened beyond a glass facade, Daniel invited Cynthia for coffee in the executive lounge, an unspoken acknowledgement that the distance between CEO and employee had begun, quietly but unmistakably, to narrow. Conversation drifted from operational reflections to personal philosophies, then paused on a realization neither could ignore. Adversity had not only proven Cynthia's capability, it had drawn their lives on converging paths once more, stronger and far less fragile than before. In the weeks following the partnership triumph, a subtle transformation unfolded between Daniel and Cynthia. not sudden enough to alarm observers, yet undeniable to anyone perceptive. Their conversations extended beyond operational briefings into thoughtful exchanges about leadership, resilience, and the strange loneliness that often accompanies responsibility. Daniel found himself anticipating her perspective during strategic planning. Cynthia discovered that his decisiveness was balanced by a depth of empathy few executives revealed. One evening, after a demanding series of meetings, a citywide storm forced most employees to remain inside until transportation resumed. Thunder rolled distantly, while rain blurred the skyline into watercolor streaks. They stood near the panoramic windows, watching lightning fracture the darkness. "Success is loud," Daniel said quietly, "but it can be isolating. People approach the title before they approach the person." Cynthia considered this before replying, "Perhaps that's why genuine recognition feels rare. It sees beyond roles." Silence followed, comfortable rather than uncertain. Then Daniel spoke with steadiness that carried years beneath it. "I never stopped wondering what became of you. Every achievement felt incomplete, because someone who once believed in me wasn't there to witness it." The honesty in his voice dismantled the last careful barrier Cynthia had maintained. Yet fear surfaced alongside warmth. "Our worlds are very different now," she admitted. "Yours is built on influence. Mine is still learning stability." Daniel met her gaze without hesitation. "Difference does not weaken connection. Secrecy does. I would rather face scrutiny than pretend indifference." His confession lingered between them, unguarded and resolute. Cynthia felt her carefully constructed emotional defenses soften, though caution remained a quiet companion. She had spent years protecting herself from disappointment. Opening her heart again required courage equal to any hardship she had survived. As the storm subsided, neither rushed a moment. They understood something significant had been spoken into existence, a love no longer sheltered by youthful promise, but tested by time and strengthened by choice. Stability rarely endures without challenge, and Theodore Global soon encountered a disruption far more deliberate than technical failure. An internal review uncovered irregular data transfers linked to confidential expansion strategies, movements subtle enough to evade routine detection, yet significant enough to suggest calculated espionage. Daniel assembled a discreet investigative unit, limiting awareness to a trusted few to prevent panic. Cynthia, whose organizational clarity had already proven invaluable, was asked to assist in reconstructing communication pathways. She approached the task with quiet intensity, mapping patterns others overlooked. Hours blurred into late nights as fragments slowly formed a disturbing picture. Someone with mid-level clearance had been feeding competitive intelligence outward. During a cross-reference session, Cynthia noticed a recurring authorization sequence attached to files Victoria's division frequently accessed, not implicating her directly, but intersecting suspiciously with a project coordinator recently hired under her recommendation. Rather than leap to conclusions, Cynthia compiled evidence with disciplined neutrality. When she presented the findings, Daniel studied the report with controlled gravity. Surveillance soon confirmed the coordinator's involvement. Confronted with irrefutable proof, he confessed to selling data under financial pressure from a rival firm. Victoria, stunned by the betrayal of someone she had trusted professionally, cooperated fully in rectifying the breach. The resolution protected the company, yet its emotional residue lingered, a reminder that ambition without integrity corrodes silently. Later, Daniel thanked Cynthia not merely for diligence but for restraint. "You sought truth, not blame," he observed. She answered simply, "Accuracy protects everyone." Respect deepened across the executive circle, transforming Cynthia from a capable employee into a figure associated with institutional trust. More privately, Daniel recognized something profound. The girl who once survived abandonment had evolved into a woman capable of safeguarding an empire. Public perception shifted again when industry media caught wind of Cynthia's growing influence within Theodore Global. Speculation, once confined to hallways, migrated into commentary columns questioning whether proximity to the CEO accelerated her ascent. Advisors suggested Daniel create visible distance to silence conjecture. Reputation, after all, was a currency carefully guarded. He listened, weighing the counsel with characteristic thoroughness, yet the conclusion arrived with unexpected simplicity. During a quarterly leadership address, concise, focused, Entirely professional, Daniel acknowledged the collective effort behind recent successes and specifically commended Cynthia's crisis management and operational foresight. The recognition was neither embellished nor defensive. It was factual, deliberate, and unmistakably public. Whispers recalibrated overnight. By anchoring her reputation to demonstrated merit rather than private association, he reframed the narrative entirely. That evening, Cynthia approached him with mixed gratitude and concern. "You didn't have to do that," she said. Daniel's reply carried calm conviction. Leadership is not the avoidance of speculation. It is the alignment with truth. The moment dissolved any remaining ambiguity between them. No longer willing to let caution dictate what authenticity required, Daniel reached for her hand, not impulsively, but with the assurance of someone choosing clarity over convenience. Cynthia felt the gesture's significance ripple through her. Years ago, promises had been spoken beneath city lights, yet this choice, made amid influence and scrutiny, carried even greater weight. They stepped forward together, aware challenges would not vanish, but equally certain that partnership multiplies strength. In choosing each other openly, they transformed vulnerability into quiet power. Their decision to marry unfolded not as spectacle, but as intention. Invitations were limited to those who had genuinely shaped their journeys: mentors, steadfast colleagues, a retired caretaker who had once encouraged Cynthia's academic discipline, and a small circle of friends who understood that meaningful beginnings rarely require grand audiences. The ceremony took place in a sunlit botanical conservatory where glass ceilings welcomed the sky, symbolizing a life no longer confined by circumstance. As Cynthia walked forward, she carried no trace of the abandoned infant history had recorded. Instead, she embodied perseverance refined into grace. Daniel watched her approach with an expression seldom witnessed in boardrooms, unguarded joy threaded with reverence. Their vows favored sincerity over ornament, promises to remain truthful in prosperity, patient in uncertainty, and anchored in mutual respect. When rings were exchanged, applause rose softly, less celebratory noise and collective acknowledgement of a story improbably fulfilled. Victoria attended as well, offering congratulations with genuine composure. Experience had reshaped her ambition into something wiser, admiration for strength wherever it appeared. During the reception, Daniel spoke briefly, not as a CEO, but as a man profoundly aware of life's unlikely orchestration. "Some encounters," he said, "are not accidents, but alignments waiting for their hour." Cynthia later stood alone for a moment beneath flowering branches, absorbing the quiet astonishment of belonging not to a title, but to a partnership freely chosen. The journey from anonymity to this luminous afternoon did not erase her past. It illuminated how far she had traveled. Marriage did not slow their momentum. Instead, it clarified a shared vision extending beyond corporate achievement. Together, they established an initiative dedicated to supporting children aging out of institutional care, providing mentorship, education grants, and transitional housing designed to replace uncertainty with structured opportunity. Cynthia insisted the program emphasize dignity rather than charity. Every participant would be equipped, not rescued. Visiting the first residential complex months later, she paused as laughter drifted through open corridors, a sound once scarce in her own early life. Daniel observed the emotion brightening her features and understood that success attains its highest form when it creates pathways for others. Theodore Global flourished in parallel, its culture subtly reshaped by values both leaders embodied: resilience, fairness, and the courage to recognize potential where others might overlook it. On an anniversary evening, they returned to the old bridge where two teenagers had once promised reunion without knowing the cost distance would demand. City lights shimmered just as they had years before, yet everything else had transformed. Daniel intertwined his fingers with hers. "We kept the promise," he said softly. Cynthia smiled, her voice calm with fulfillment. "And then we built something beyond it." As they stood overlooking the flowing river, the future no longer felt like terrain to conquer, but like a horizon to explore together, proof that beginnings, however silent, can lead to destinations brighter than imagination dares predict. As this story comes to an end, remember that behind every luxury lies a truth few ever see. If this story moved you, support the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Until the next unforgettable true story, stay inspired and stay curious.